The famous chimes of Big Ben will fall silent next Monday and remain so for 4 years. It was confirmed today that repair work will begin on the Elizabeth Tower, and that for the health and safety of the workers, the bongs will not sound. Our correspondent Simon Harris reports.
It's the bell with the world-famous bong. The distinctive chime of Big Ben is London's signature tune. But next Monday, Big Ben will fall silent for up to 4 years to allow the iconic Elizabeth Tower to be given a makeover. The bell is simply too loud for the workers on the scaffolding, too loud for modern health and safety rules.
When you're actually stood close to the bell, it's about 118 decibels. So it's not something you'd want to do all day, every day for the next few years.
To have the bells ringing every quarter of an hour is something that, from a health and safety point of view, isn't acceptable. I suppose some people might argue they could wear ear protection, but frankly they need to be able to hear what the people around them are saying. They need to be able to hear warning alarms, for instance, if they go off. So that's the reason why the bells have to be silenced.
London wouldn't be London without it.
But London will have to get used to being London without it, with a few exceptions.
Even during the enforced silence, the chimes of Big Ben will be heard at least 3 times a year. At 11 o'clock in the morning on both Armistice Day and Remembrance Sunday, and at midnight on New Year's Eve.
The bell will also be rushed back into service if it's needed for a state funeral. Big Ben has been silenced by repairs before, but never for as long as this. The Elizabeth Tower is in a bad way, with a leaking roof and rusting ironwork. The parliamentary authorities are also taking the opportunity to add a few modern touches.
We want to put a lift in, which is most important. That's going to enable us to get casualties out of the, in the rare occasion that we have a problem in the tower, to get casualties out of the building fairly quickly and to get staff up the building. We're also going to put in very basic things like a WC at high level for the clockmakers and running water, that sort of idea.
Big Ben will bow out at midday next Monday and won't be heard on an hourly basis until sometime in 2021. Simon Harris, ITV News, Westminster.
The full scope and remit of the Grenfell public inquiry was released today. The retired judge in charge confirming he will look at some of the wider issues like building regulations and the role of the council in the run-up to the fire. But what he won't do is conduct a broader examination of social housing in London and beyond, an omission which has angered some residents and campaigners. Our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Even before the flames were out, the search for answers had begun. How it happened was quickly put down to a faulty fridge freezer and the wrong type of cladding. But why it happened is a much broader question. Today, the government revealed the scope of the public inquiry into the Grenfell Tower tragedy. And while much will be investigated, there is one glaring omission. Government policy on social housing will not be covered.
They're actually not looking at all the issues, and I do think it's a betrayal. It's not what we wanted. It's really not what we wanted. It's what we expected and what we feared.
The inquiry will consider the cause and spread of the fire, the tower's design, construction and refurbishment, safety regulations for high-rise buildings and the actions of Kensington and Chelsea Council. The government insists social housing policy will not be swept under the carpet.
I will be conducting a listening exercise across the country, talking to social housing tenants on issues where social housing policy has worked and where it hasn't worked. And of course, subject to the outcome of that, we will then come forward with proposals in the coming months to deal with the issues that have been identified.
When the Prime Minister visited the scene of the tragedy shortly afterwards, she was jeered. Kensington and Chelsea council meetings have also provoked angry outbursts.
You're all a bunch of liars! They don't want you! My wife doesn't want you! The dead doesn't want you!
Against this background of hostility and suspicion, Sir Martin Moore-Bick, the retired judge leading the inquiry, faced the challenge of trying to get the Grenfell community on side. Now he's under pressure to allow community advisors to have a role.
I think that announcement needs to be made quite quickly as a matter of urgent, because that is actually kind of the litmus test in regards to how much the community will buy into their trust and confidence into the process.
Theresa May said the inquiry would get to the truth of what happened and lessons would be learnt to stop a similar catastrophe in the future.
Sir Martin's investigation will largely be made up of a series of public hearings, starting here at the Connaught Rooms in central London on September the 14th. It's not clear how long the inquiry will take. But Sir Martin has promised an interim report into the cause of the fire and how it spread by the end of March. Simon Harris, ITV News, Holborn.
It is perhaps the most famous sound in the capital, the chimes of Big Ben that have rung out hourly across London since 1859. And today, 2 days after plans to silence the bongs for 4 years were confirmed, the Prime Minister stepped in to say that simply cannot be right. She called for Parliament to urgently review the repair work, and her intervention has caused a rethink, with the House of Commons Commission saying it will consider whether it's necessary to silence them for so long. Here's our political correspondent Simon Harris.
They were making the most of it today. Photos and selfies starring Big Ben are a must for any self-respecting visitor. But the famous clock is about to vanish from view and controversially go quiet. The Elizabeth Tower will soon be shrouded in scaffolding as London's most famous landmark disappears from the tourist trail.
It's just something that we all relate to. It's something you hear about and know about. Had to come and see it.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much one of the symbols of London, so it's a massive thing for tourists to come see.
Well, if you come to London, it's important to see the Big Ben.
On Monday, the parliamentary authorities announced plans to silence Big Ben for 4 years. The tower and clock are due to have the mother of all makeovers, but it's feared Big Ben's bongs could deafen the workers. This is what we were told 2 days ago.
To have the bells ringing every quarter of an hour is something that, from a health and safety point of view, isn't acceptable.
The mere mention of health and safety was enough to turn newspaper headline writers and some MPs apoplectic with rage. Today, the Prime Minister stepped into the row.
Well, of course, we want to ensure that people are safe at work, but it can't be right for Big Ben to be silent for 4 years. Of course, this is a House of Commons matter, and I hope that the Speaker, as chairman of the House of Commons Commission, will urgently look into this and ensure that we can hear Big Ben through those 4 years.
Stopping Big Ben from making its distinctive noise involves disconnecting it from the clock mechanism. It's said to take half a day.
The MPs in charge of the project quoted experts who concluded it wasn't practical to start and stop the bells every day, and it would be a waste of public money. But within hours of the Prime Minister's intervention, there was a rethink.
In a statement, the House of Commons Commission said, of course, any discussion will focus on undertaking the work efficiently, protecting the health and safety of those involved, and seeking to ensure resumption of normal service as soon as is practicable, given those requirements.
Are you honestly telling me in the 21st century we couldn't come up with some system, some way of both protecting the rights of the workers and defending that glorious sound?
Tonight, the Commons authorities promised to restore Big Ben's bongs to their role as the nation's timekeeper as soon as possible.
Well, Simon, there's also to be a review as soon as possible, but we are told Big Ben will be silenced on Monday, so what will happen?
Yes, it's not clear what as soon as possible means. The plan is still to switch off Big Ben after the 12 bongs of midday on Monday. Now, the MPs on the House of Commons Commission have agreed to look again at the refurbishment plans, but they won't do that before Parliament returns, and that's not until September the 5th. And any ideas put forward will have to be both feasible, affordable and technically possible. So I don't think we're any nearer tonight knowing just how long Big Ben's enforced silence will be. We heard today from the Prime Minister giving her view. We also got the Leader of the Opposition, Jeremy Corbyn's take on it. And he said that although he would miss the sound of Big Ben, not having it would not be a national disaster or a catastrophe. Lucrezia.
All right, Simon Harris, thank you. We begin tonight with the strain and stress suffered by people working in the Square Mile, the city. We can reveal the country's leading private mental health clinic has seen a sharp rise in the number of people approaching it for help. Referrals have doubled in a year. Simon Harris has our report.
The city, it exists to make money. If it was easy, we'd all be doing it, but it's not. The city is a pressure cooker, which generates not only wealth, but stress, and it's taking its toll on the workforce. Behind this door in Fenchurch Street is a branch of the Priory, the rehab clinic of choice for A-list celebrities. But this one is for city workers. In the last year, the number of patients being referred has doubled.
People come here when they're under pressure at work, they're under pressure from their boss, they're maybe spending a lot of time away from home, so it puts their marriage under stress, their financial commitments, They're starting to use coping mechanisms such as drinking or potentially illicit drugs.
In the first 8 months of 2016, the number of people in the City of London who took their own life or attempted suicide had reached almost 60.
The City of London Corporation and the police were concerned enough earlier this summer to launch a month-long suicide prevention campaign. Posters bearing the slogan "Release the Pressure" urged city workers to discuss their mental health.
The Campaign Against Living Miserably is a charity which runs a hotline offering help to men who may be suicidal. In the city, men still outnumber women.
Anyone that works in the city knows that the hours are long, the pressures are great, and the culture is one of success, and at times that can be quite brutal, so that can be a very difficult place to be for people that do work in that environment.
PwC is one of the largest firms of auditors in the world. It has a workforce of 13,000 in London. Every one of them is encouraged to talk about their mental health. John Williams is a senior partner. As one of the company's mental health advocates, it's his job to look for signs of stress in his team.
I think traditionally we've not been very good. There's a recognition across the city that workplace stress and other related and sometimes unrelated mental health issues are a problem, both an economic problem but also a social problem, and beginning now to deal with it.
Many employees in financial services are well paid, but salaries and bonuses often depend on targets and performance. That sort of pressure can all too easily be a breeding ground for depression, anxiety and addiction. Simon Harris, ITV News.